Today's episode of This Week in Startups is brought to you by Squarespace. Check out squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, use offer code TWIST to save 10% off on your first purchase of a website or domain. And by SeatGeek, the smartest, easiest way to get tickets to any type of live event. Download the SeatGeek app and enter promo code TWIST to get $20 off your first purchase.
Hey everybody, welcome to This Week in Startups. I'm your host, Jason Calacanis, and this is one of the exciting Ask Jason episodes that you asked for today. I'm going to answer questions live on Facebook, and as well as some of the questions you sent in. If you ever want to send me an Ask Jason question, just email jason@calacanis.com. I'll CC Emmy Award-winning producer Jackie. If it's a good question, if it's a bad question, I will not respond, but if it's a good question, I will respond. So we're going to take questions, and I'll start with one of them here on a piece of paper that I have in front of me that somebody sent in earlier, and then I'm going to go one from the sheet of pre-sent in questions, and then I'll go one from the live chat room. So we are monitoring your live chat room. We will like your posts if we like them. So please ask your questions on the live stream, and let's get right to it. Trina asks, what do you think is an acceptable burn rate for an early stage startup, and what is the most effective strategy for minimizing our burn rate? Great question, Trina. Thank you for that one. So what is burn rate? Burn rate is, let's start with a definition, the money you lose every month. So if you spend, let's say, $10,000 running your startup of 2 people and your cost is $5,000 for each person, and you make $0 in January, your burn rate is $10,000 a month. Now, let's say it's February and you add another person, so you're spending $15,000 a month and you still don't make any money. Now your burn rate's up to $15,000 and you've averaged over 2 months a burn rate of 12.5, or $12,500. Let's say in month 3, March of the year, you get up to $20,000 in spend. You got 4 team members. But you get your first client and they spend $10,000 a month with you. Now your burn has dropped to $10,000. So your spend is 20, your revenue is 10, your burn is 10, right? So that's, and some people say this weird word, net burn. It's just burn. Burn is what you lose every month, is how you should think about it. Now, to your question is, what's an acceptable burn rate? Well, listen, in the history of Silicon Valley, we've had very free-flowing funding environments where people will spend $1 million a month and burn the majority of it while they're waiting to have product market fit or they're waiting to turn on monetization. But on average, I would say, in today's market, it's 2018 at the time we're taping this, most people, when they're starting a company, have a handful of employees, call it 3 to 6 employees. Each employee here in the Valley probably costs $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 a month, all the way baked in, depending on if they're taking a haircut or if they're asking for max money or, a lot of money, like over $100,000 a year, which, for a startup is probably starting to get into the high end of what you would spend per employee per year. So that's burn rate. And the way most people can lower their burn rate, the biggest driver of your burn rate typically is your staff salaries. So you can do it one of 2 ways. One, the people on the staff can do multiple jobs and work really hard. 2, which eliminates the need to add salaries. Or number 2, you can outsource some job functions or just leave them out. So you can outsource accounting, you can outsource HR, you can outsource web hosting and cloud computing, right? So whole categories of things have been outsourced already. But the number one is going to be, of course, your staff salaries. Now, how do you lower them? Well, you can find people who are already rich to come work at your startup and give them equity and compensation, and lower the compensation and increase the equity depending on what their goals are. But we do have a problem with startups that are underfunded or only have $500,000 they've raised. They can't go hire a $400,000, Google engineer who is running a department because they would blow through all their funding. So you have to make do with what you have. I'd say most companies coming out of our incubator are spending somewhere in the range, burning $10,000 to $25,000 a month. In other words, $100,000 to $300,000 a year. When they close their seed round and they have $1.5 million in the bank, maybe they go up to burning $75,000 a month, $50,000 a month. And it's okay to burn this money because you're not actually burning it. you're investing it. If you're doing it right, you're not just spending it willy-nilly. You're investing it building a product, building a team, building a brand, and building a product, and building a customer base, building a culture inside of your company. So burn is a little misleading. You're not just putting the money into a pile and spending it on a party. You should be, if you're doing it right, investing it. And don't look at the companies that are burning tons of money or the ones that are run by 2 engineers and are spending no money as the quintessential examples. But the best way for you to save money is to have a developer on your team or 2. So have a technical co-founder. That will lower your burn the most because you don't have to go spend on hiring a bunch of extra developers and hire people who are already rich and can afford to work for a haircut. And this is where there's a lot of issues that come in about equality and fairness. You know what? Startups aren't fair. They're underfunded, they're dogfights, and they typically cannot pay to, some people have a burn rate, a personal burn rate, which comes into play. Some people have a personal burn rate of $20,000, $30,000 a month because they got 3 kids in college and they were used to working at some big giant company, like Google or something, and making $500,000 a year. And so they just can't afford to work at a startup. That's why a lot of people in Silicon Valley say startups are a young person's game. I don't necessarily think that, but it does help if your own personal burn rate is extremely low. So to qualify to be a great founder, in a lot of cases, getting rid of debt and having a very low personal burn rate is very, very advisable. Now, of course, if you're 40 years old and you have 3 kids in college or private school and you're spending all this money, you may not be able to accept a job at a startup, and that's just the reality of the world, right? Sometimes you have to just take the highest paying job you can get. So it's a great question. Thank you so much. Okay, let's take a question from our live audience. And this one is from Ajmal Matan. And he says, talk about mental health in Silicon Valley. And that's a good question. Mental health is an issue around the world, certainly here in our country, as we live longer and, life becomes more complex and stressful. I guess some people would argue we're overdiagnosing, but listen, people are feeling anxiety and depression just across the entire country. And if you just look at startups as a subset, startups are a pressure cooker. And I see 2 trends. One, some people cannot handle stress. They have an anxiety disorder, or they suffer from depression, or they have a manic or mania type aspect of their personality. Those people, putting them in the pressure cooker of a startup is a bad idea. Just like sending them to war might be a bad idea, and putting them in the pressure cooker of an active engagement in a war would be a bad idea, or putting them in any kind of stressful situation would be a bad idea. So I think this is another one of these key and very controversial issues here in Silicon Valley. We have to be careful about funding people and putting them into this pressure cooker as investors. Now, we don't have the ability to say to grown adults, like, I'm not going to invest in you because you are suffering from anxiety or depression. I think that would be a violation of people's rights and their privacy. So it's a delicate situation. It's not like I can say here as an angel investor, I will not invest in somebody who's had depression or anxiety or ADHD or Asperger's. That would be, I think, incredibly biased, right? I think we'd all agree on that. So we have to monitor the situation. There have been high-profile suicides inside of startups. We have seen that over and over again. I don't know if statistically it's more than the suicide rate that we would normally see, in the United States. So it's a complex issue. It's certainly well above my pay grade to know if the startups are causing this. But I will say, if you are feeling like you're under massive anxiety or depression, you need to talk to people and ask the people around you for help. This is the cardinal sin I see, is people don't ask for help. And as investors and your team and your board and the people around you, they're always willing to help. In fact, I think humans are generally good. If somebody just came walking up to you on the street and said, I feel like I'm a danger to myself and I feel really depressed and suicidal, you would not just walk away from that person. You'd say, oh, have a seat. Let's have a cup of coffee. This is a stranger I'm talking about. And I would, certainly you would, I'm almost certain, watching this at home or listening on your podcasting app, you would stop the person, say, sit down, let's talk about it. Do you have any relatives I can call, or family and friends? And, life is not life is precious. And, we see this all the time when people try to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge here in San Francisco. Good Samaritans, just regular human beings, stop them. So it's definitely an issue. And Gary makes a joke. If you didn't invest in founders with ADHD, no one would get funded. It's funny because it's partially true, right? There are also, and this is the other side of the coin, I think sometimes extreme personalities will pursue extreme pursuits. So people with sometimes these extreme personalities will be attracted to things like, solo climbing of mountains without ropes, or, skydiving, or, you see this in Silicon Valley where people make a little bit of money and then they start flying planes everywhere and they have to fly their own helicopter and learn how to be a pilot. It's an extreme group of people. It's like extreme sports. And so I do think that's just part of the nature of the individuals, the rugged, individualistic, crazy, dreaming people who are drawn to startups sometimes get a little too close to the edge, and we see it happen all the time. So, let's go back to our Ask Jason sheet here. ZL, how long before a round do you like to get to know the founders, and what are you looking for at the time if they're self-funding to Series A? From ZL. So I think for me personally, I like to meet founders who are unknown, right? This is cold pitch. I like a cold pitch when I can see the product is launched and you have some, what I'll call modest traction, 2 or 3 months, 2 or 3 weeks, up to a year. Then I at least have something to talk to you about, because I'm at the stage of my career and I've decided to live in this Goldilocks zone. Your product's launched, you have a little bit of traction, and you're not at a competitive Series A where you have 10 offers and you don't need me. That's our Goldilocks zone, not too hot, not too cold. So I like to engage people there. I can tell you definitely where I don't want to engage people. I don't want to engage people in discussions of ideas, or, I have a business plan. Like, it's 2018. You could just build a small product for 10K or 20K, rustle up some savings, rustle up some friends, convince some developers to build it with you on spec, and just build a prototyping and get some MVP, minimum viable product, to market. That's me personally. Now, there are 2 exceptions to that. One, if we've worked together before, either you've worked at one of my companies or I worked for you. There's like 2 people in the world who can say I worked for them, I think, Mike Savino and my dad. And so if you are somebody I know, sure. If you know the angel, you could spitball ideas, you can talk to them. That's normal. But I assume you're talking about a cold pitch. So if I know you, willing to go out for a drink or have coffee or do a walk and talk about your ideas till the cows come home because we're friends and you're in my network. If you're referred by somebody, that's another amazing opportunity for me. If you're referred by somebody who I know is a high quality person, yeah, maybe I'll go a little bit earlier. Maybe I'll go right before the product's launch or you're in closed beta. But generally, I get hundreds of emails a day. I need to sort through them. And the best investors are the busiest investors, and the busiest investors are going to want to talk to you about your product and how consumers are using it. So I recommend not contacting high-profile people until you have the product completed. Build it with sweat equity and raise a little money yourself. Yes, Squarespace. I love Squarespace. We use it for all of our event websites with dramatic, striking results. Beautiful websites. Go check out launchfestivalsydney.com. We're going to go to Sydney in June, and we're able to pop up that website in minutes using the incredible templates available to us at Squarespace. It's so powerful. It has full e-commerce functionality, so you can sell anything you want online, and you can customize that look and feel, the settings, with just a few clicks. And everybody in your organization can learn how to edit your website. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. And if you want to buy domains, you can choose from over 200 extensions. And of course, it comes with a never-ending list of features. They just keep adding features, but they keep the price the same. That's the beauty of software as a service. They have analytics, so you know how to grow. And built-in search engine optimization. You don't have to hire somebody to do that. It's all built in, as well as free and secure hosting. Now, if you need 24-hour, 7-day-a-week, award-winning customer support, it's there for you. But I'll be honest, I doubt you're going to need it because it's so simple and so easy to use. But it is nice to know that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you're going to get that great customer support. So here is your call to action. go check out squarespace.com for a free trial. Go ahead. Check out squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch your beautiful website, just use that offer code TWIST, T-W-I-S-T, to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Make it yourself and make it stand out with Squarespace. It's a great company, great people over there, and they hosted my first talk for my book, and I thank Anthony and the team over there for supporting us with that great, beautiful space. If you're looking, by the way, just as a side note, this isn't in the ad copy, but if you're looking for a company to work out, oh my God, Squarespace has a gorgeous office, and what a great team. You could do a lot worse than working at Squarespace. It is pretty dope. Okay, and they're in New York, by the way. Well, let's get back to this amazing episode right now. Thanks again, Squarespace. Okay, our next question comes from Luke Hepburn. He says, hey, Jason, we found some guys to join us yesterday, which was a huge achievement. Besides vesting, what's your view on equity split? Should it be equal, excluding someone who has put money on the table and taken a risk, or should someone hold the majority to make the tough, decisive questions? So you're talking about co-founders in a company, in a startup, and how do you split the equity? This is a very personal decision. I think if you're an experienced founder, you might want to start the company yourself, incorporate, and then start recruiting people to be part of your management team, and then you can make these decisions one after the other. So if you're a seasoned founder or a person with money who wants to control their destiny and not have a bunch of partners that they have to get agreements with to make decisions, you can be the founder and build a founding team. A founding team might have 1 to 5% each, 1 to 10% each of the company, and you have a pool of options. And so let's say you set up a 15% pool for employees. You might hire a founding team member that's a VP of engineering for 5 points, 4 points for a VP of sales. You get the idea. Now, if you're just starting it and it's 3 people around a table, you're going to have to say, okay, we're going to split the equity 3 ways, and I'm going to put $100,000 in to seed fund it. So I want 10% for my $100K, and then the 3 founders will split 30% each. But each of the founders has to stay here for 5 years, and we're all going to vest our shares monthly over 5 years. So we get that's 60 months or so. So you're getting about 2% a month of your shares and of your overall equity grant. So that means you would be getting, if you had 30%, you'd be getting 0.5% per month over 60 months and a cliff. So 12 months before I get anything. And you all agree that if I leave early, I don't get my shares, right? Or maybe I vest 2 months ahead or 3 months ahead, something like that. So you want to make sure you have those vesting conditions in your documents. And other times, if there were 2 founders and they said, hey, we own 50% each, and they want to bring on a 3rd founder, but it's month 6, they might say, listen, we want you to come on as a 3rd founder. We're willing to give you 15% of our shares each. So we'll each have 35% and you'll have 30. And we think that's fair because we started 6 months earlier than you. So as long as you have an honest upfront conversation about it, I think you'll be fine. And you definitely want to have those protections that if somebody leaves early, you're not working for them. And you definitely do not want to vest everybody day one. That is the big cardinal mistake. Do not vest everyone day one. I've seen this happen and it is bad because then somebody breaks up and you have a lawsuit. And that's what you don't want to have. You want to have easy peasy breakup conditions. So and that goes for every hiring. You want to be able to say to every hire, not all relationships work out. Therefore, we're hiring you to be the VP of sales. You'll get your shares in month 13. First 12 months, you have to hit that cliff, as we call it. And if it doesn't work out, we're going to give you 2 weeks severance, and that's it. And we wish you luck, and it's employment at will, so you can leave at any time, and we can fire you at any time. We both have to opt in. It's double opt-in. Having that kind of candid discussion with every single hire and talking to them about that, you may think it's already known or it's obviously stated, but you can never state the obvious enough sometimes, especially with certain people. Okay, let's take another question. Okay, Druv has an interesting question here. He says, is the word sustainable startup a no-go for an angel? What would your thoughts about investing in for-profit sustainable startups, usually using tech for good? If you use words like benefit, sustainable, social good in your pitch, you may get high fives from your friends and you may get, a lot of hugs and kisses and just way to go and thumbs up from your friends at parties and your loved ones, but you're going to disqualify yourself in large part from getting funding. The whole idea of venture capital and angel funding is to get a massive return, to have a lot of companies flame out, but the ones that survive become huge. So if you're trying to, come out of the gate and say, I'm doing a nonprofit in a for-profit kind of function, in a for-profit vehicle, that just looks bad. So what I would say is pitch your company as a marauding capitalist company. And if you want to do some nice things like give 1% of your equity, not the investor's equity, to charity in a trust, Mazel tov, great idea. If you want to give, 1% of your employee time to doing some team building and volunteering, sounds like a great use of 1% of your things. If you want to give 1% of your profits to some nonprofits and some local schools to help build the next generation of tech entrepreneurs, that all sounds reasonable. But if you come out of the gate and say, hey, we're going to cut our margins in half, and this is going to be a sustainable startup to help the world, you will literally disqualify yourself from 99% of investors. You will then qualify yourself for the small number of sustainable, mission-driven investors. So I'm not saying this is the way it should be. I'm not saying this is the way I act or I construct the world. Everybody knows I was an investor in HandUp, which was a startup that was trying to build software to help alleviate the homeless problem. So what my opinion of it is not really important. What I'm trying to do is give you the overall landscape. You will negate 99 out of 100 meetings. People will not take the meeting if you use those trigger words. Hashtag trigger warning. Don't trigger the greedy investors to think that you're not greedy and you don't want to make a lot of money or they will not fund you. And something to think about. Bill Gates was a marauding capitalist. People couldn't buy enough shares of Microsoft. And now he's giving it all away. So I think the high art, the best, most sustainable model of this is to, when you're doing business, do business and make money. Be a good person, sure. Have a great culture, of course. Do everything by the books, yes. Maybe you can bend a little here or there to, bend society to your vision. But save the philanthropy, I believe, for after you make all your money. Then you have a ton of money and you don't have this conflict where you have to explain to your investors, hey, we took the profits and we gave them away. That's not going to fly with most investors. So I'm just being pragmatic here. Again, I'm not telling you how this is how I think the world should be. I'm telling you this is how the world is. If you want to sit here in some dream world that may come when this next generation starts making companies and they don't care about money, like whatever the millennial, post-millennial generation is, I think they call them Generation Z or Generation C for the connected generation. Yeah, maybe that generation will not care about profits and venture capital will all become a giant charity process. I doubt it. But I see no reason for you to give yourself another hurdle to get through. Startups are hard enough. Convincing people that your startup is going to do good in the world and is going to be this triple bottom line and all this other nonsense, it's just going to be looked at as nonsense. Like, why are you not? It's hard enough to get product market fit. That's how most investors think, and they're not wrong. Getting product market fit is hard. Now you're going to layer on that you have to give all the money away and it's just too much. Okay, listen. Get focused. Make a bunch of money, then give it away. Do it in that order. Yes, SeatGeek. Let me thank SeatGeek for making a great product that I have used dozens of times. I love SeatGeek because I love going to see concerts. I love going to see my Knicks. I love going to see my Warriors. I love basketball games, and I love live music. And SeatGeek gets me great seats at a great price. In just a few taps. Get that app. Get the SeatGeek app and you'll understand what I'm talking about. It's designed to make your ticket buying experience easier than ever. It's so quick. Zip, zip, zip. And you get your tickets at a great price. It will save you time and money because they search multiple ticket sites to compare prices and find amazing deals. They grade every ticket based on value. Value. You don't want to overpay. So use their app, SeatGeek's app, to get every ticket rated based on value. And they will identify the best seats that fit your budget. You get that little slider. You can pick how much you're willing to spend. Maybe if I'm going to the Knicks game and it's just me and my wife, hey, maybe I'll spend $1,000 a ticket. But if I'm going with like 6 or 7 people, I got to dial it back a little bit. I'll pay $200 a ticket, $150, and sit a little bit further back. And you want to have that flexibility, and SeatGeek's app does that. Plus, every purchase is fully guaranteed. This is critically important because we all know that there are scammers out there and fakers and counterfeit tickets and all this nonsense. You need to have that purchase fully guaranteed, and SeatGeek does that for you. You want to make SeatGeek your go-to app for finding the best deals on every type of ticket, from sports to concerts to comedy. Yes, I saw Amy Schumer in concert, had a hilarious time, and theater. I even have done some theater recently. Yes. You say, hey, maybe Jason doesn't like theater. Yes, actually I do. I saw Bruce on Broadway with Mom. I took my mom. That's a good son. Best of all, my Twist listeners are going to get $20 off their first SeatGeek purchase. That's right, $20 off. Get that $20 from SeatGeek just by downloading the app and using the promo code that you all know and love. TWIST, T-W-I-S-T. TWIST, you're part of the Twist Army, so use the code TWIST, T-W-I-S-T, and get $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. Okay, thanks again, SeatGeek. I really love the product, and I appreciate you supporting This Week in Startups. So let's get back to this amazing episode. Okay, I'm going to take another question from our chat room. Lukman Nash Ahmed asks me, a business bootstraps to $500,000 in ARR, annual run rate, or annual recurring revenue, selling a cloud service that underpins their future product. Selling a cloud service that underpins their future product. The actual app has not yet been released. It generates $0. How much does the existing revenue impact your investing decisions? Okay, so what you're talking about here is a group of founders make some money, and we'll call that the legacy revenue. They had a business, it made money. But then they said, you know what? We're going to build this other business. It's bigger and it's better and has $0. And that other revenue doesn't really matter. Okay, that's confusing. I don't like confusing businesses and confusing decisions to make. It makes it more difficult to understand, like, well, what if the new one doesn't work? Are you going to go back to the old one? Or the new one requires the old one? So it just seems like you're trying to make money two different ways. And I'll give you an example of that from a famous company. Google made something called the Google Search Appliance. It was a rack-mounted server with Google's logo on it, and you could buy servers from Google to index all the data at your company, and they may still sell it, and then build your own search engine for JP Morgan or for the New York Public Library. And then it became apparent at a certain point in time that people buying software from Google was not as powerful as just everybody using Google for free and Google indexing the world's information and making money off of advertising. So these things do happen. Now you have Amazon, where Amazon has a bunch of cloud computing services that they built Amazon on top of, and then they released into the wild and let people use their infrastructure, which then lowered the cost of their infrastructure and made the money. And now people believe that Amazon Web Services is the crown jewel. It is the money printing machine inside of Amazon, and that getting Amazon basic cables and, your coffee delivered from Amazon is never going to be a great business for them. But Amazon Web Services is going to be a highly profitable business. So there's an example of the opposite happening and working. At the end of the day, having great performance will give you clarity. So early on, you want to have clarity. $500,000 to me makes it intriguing. Oh, you know how to make $500,000? But you do have to understand that you're going to confuse investors. So you're going to have to make it very clear in discussions. We made $500,000 on this infrastructure product, but that's not our business. Our business is this next layer we're building. And they may look at it and say, that's nice, they made some money, but I'll wait and see. And this is one of the problems. You need to push sometimes investors to make a decision. And this is the kind of situation where they're going to look at it and say, okay, prove it, make the other product. So just be self-aware that you're confusing investors, and you might be confusing people inside your company because they're going to be looking at it and say, hey, boss, should I work on the thing making us $500,000 a year, or should I work on the thing making us $0 a year? And they might just naturally be inclined to work on the thing that's making more money. And so now you have confusion inside of your own startup. Confusion like this on how we make money is a problem. So always have perfect clarity. We make money this way. If you happen to charge in the past for that, that's fine, but make it super clear. Tell everybody 10 times. That's not our business. That's legacy revenue. It doesn't matter. You get judged. Your job performance gets judged. My performance as CEO, our board's judgment on us will be passed based upon product B, not product A. Product A, We get zero credit for it. It's not going to be in the board deck. It's not going to be talked about at our meetings. We're just going to talk about product B from now on. And in fact, product B is product A. Product A is gone. Okay, we'll take another question. This one's from Luca. Luca says, I am a solo founder. In the past 8 months, I've built a product and found the first 3 customers. Congratulations, Luca. I'm working on a B2B SaaS platform. That's a business-to-business software as a service SaaS platform. And at this stage, I'd rather hire employees than search for co-founders. Do you think it is the right approach? I do think you have the right approach. I talked before about having a founding team. So I encourage you not to call people employees. If you call people employees, they're going to act like employees, which means you got to manage them and they're just punching a clock. I would call your first 10 employees the founding team. And I would give them great equity in the company. You already have the lion's share of it, so you can be generous. You can give the first 10 employees 1-2 points each, dilute yourself 10%, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. They feel good about it. You still own the most. You still control the board. You control the voting shares. And if people don't like it, they can start their own company. And you have to just have that candid discussion with them. But I would not just say I'm hiring employees. I would say I'm building a team. I'm building a founding team. Think about yourself. If you said, hey, I'm looking to hire some employees, you want to come work for me? Or if you said, I'm looking to build a founding team to solve this problem in the world, would you like to join me? That's powerful, right? So just be careful with the language you use. But I do think if you've put the work in, you got the clients, you got it this far, be a solo founder. It's okay. I think other firms, they kind of like having 2 founders because if one gets hit by a bus or gives up, then the company doesn't die. But, there's a lot of solo founders out there who have done very well. So you're doing great, Luca. The fact is you found your first 3 customers. So get them to pay you money and everything else will follow suit. All right, let's take another question, this time from the chat room. Sunny Duong says, what are some bad habits that founders don't seem to realize and that are very common? And what about bad habits of angels that you have noticed? I'm going to start with the latter. For angels, I think one of the big problems they make, big problems, especially early on, is they bet too much money on their first couple of startups. So let's say an angel has allocated $1 million of their $10 million net worth to invest in startups. This is like a rich person. Well, if she takes that $1 million and invests $500,000 in the first company she meets and $250,000 in the next company she meets, she's only got $250,000 left, which means if those 2 companies do really well and she has to put follow-on funding in, she's only got 25% of her chip stack left. She's already spent 75% of her chip stack. That's a mistake. What you should do is, as I outline in the book, angelthebook.com, maybe make 10 small bets of $5,000 each and learn the craft. Those companies will always need more money. You can always, if a company breaks out in those first 10 $5,000 bets, if one of them breaks out, you can put $50,000 in, or you can put $100,000 in. But start small, learn the craft, and take your time. Don't be afraid to say, not yet. You don't have to say no. You can say, I'm not there yet, but I'd like to stay in touch. Would you please consider putting me on your monthly update to investors? And then you can see, does this founder keep up and communicate well with their existing investors? If not, maybe that's a red flag as well. So that's the leak in most angel investors' game. The other leak I see in angel investors, this consistent mistake, is they put bad money after good. So they have a good reason to invest in this company. The founder seems promising. The product looks good. The early customers are enthusiastic. A year goes by, 2 years goes by. They get asked to put more money in, but the customers who you talk to who fell in love with the product early on are no longer using it. And the founder hasn't made great progress, and they've lost a bunch of team members, and they can't build a team, and they can't convince other investors. And so you're left holding the bag and saying, okay, I put $50,000 into this company. It's going to die, so maybe I'll put another $50,000 in to keep it from dying. And all you're doing is prolonging the life of a terminally ill patient. It literally is like, this person is in a coma, and I'm just going to keep them alive for another year and hope that they come out of it. The truth is, they're probably not, in this case, going to come out of it, and you'd be better off putting that money into the next great startup and getting another swing at bat. You already have shares in the startup. If they break out, they break out. There's no reason for you to double down if the company hasn't performed. So, Sonny, those are my 2 leaks for most angel investors. Now, let's talk about leaks and bad habits from founders. One of the worst habits a founder can have is to not be decisive and to make decisions quickly. yes, you have to think things through, but in the time it takes to argue and debate a big question in your company, should we try selling into this group of people? So we're building educational software. Should we try to sell into schools or not? Well, that's a big question, of course. Here's an easy way to decide it. Instead of spending a month doing research and debating it, why don't you talk to 5 buyers in the education space and say, can I come talk to you about my startup? I could really use your help. And if you give me half an hour of your time to just interview you, and I'm going to record it, but only for my team's use, I'd love to give you a $100 gift card to Starbucks or Amazon. If just as a thank you, you can use it for your students or whatever. So now, if 5 out of 5 people you email and follow up with 2 times, so you've sent 15 emails to 5 people, if none of them respond to you, you know that they probably don't care about the company or the product. So maybe, is it a small sample size? Yes, but at least you've gotten some data. So the lean startup movement really got into the scientific method of startups. It's not always correct, but it's more often correct than not. So I think reading the lean startup and founders understanding, hey, how do I get some data to make decisions is always good, as opposed to procrastination. The other thing is, I think people don't talk to their customers enough. Do you talk to your customers every day? Well, I get all the customer support lines. Every email that gets sent out from inside.com, every email that comes to support@launch.co or any of these things, I see them in my email box. And some people say like, oh, it's a waste of your time. No, it's not. Because a lot of times something breaks, I see some people complain, or the audio on This Week in Startups goes out and it was a mistake and it came out too low, or there's a hum. And I like to know about that stuff. So stay close to your customers. That is, the further away from your customers you get, the more people in your company try to distance you as the founder from the actual flow of customer feedback, the worse it's going to be for you. Let everybody in the company see customer feedback and have honest discussions about it. And being candid with yourself and self-aware, that's another thing that a lot of founders don't do. They're not self-aware. So they don't know that they're wasting all this time going to speaking gigs and not increasing the sales or increasing the key metrics that will drive the next round of funding. I think those are the main ones. I mean, wasting time going to TEDx and Summit at Sea and Summit that and all this nonsense. I've said it before, until you have product market fit and you're ringing the cash register, you should not be going to any conferences unless that conference rings the cash register or gets you more users. And you can say, I'm spending $1,000 going to this conference and I'm going to get 100 users, and those users are worth $100 lifetime value each. So it's a profitable event for me to go to. You got to be a little bit cutthroat about these things. Okay, we'll take another question for this Ask Jason from our chat room. And this one comes from Rupin Patel, and he says, is it worth getting into a BD accelerator? What would be a fair deal? These business development accelerators, I don't know too much about them. And I think the best way to decide if an accelerator, putting aside a business development accelerator or my accelerator, launch incubator, or Y Combinator, or any of these places, the best thing you can do is talk to the graduates and ask them a simple question. Would you go to the launch incubator, or would you go to Y Combinator? Would you go to Techstars? Would you go to, pick the program, would you go to that program again? Now, understand that these individuals are vested because they gave 6% or 7%, sometimes in some predatory ones, 15% of their equity to these programs. So it's like asking somebody who just bought a new car if they like it or not. Well, of course they like it. They're super vested. They're not objective. They spent $50,000 on the car. They're going to tell you it's great because they want to validate themselves. So the way I look at it is, if they pause for 10 seconds when you say, what do you think of Launch Incubator? Would you do it again? If they don't say, yes, absolutely, I would do it again, then you've got a problem. If they pause for 10 seconds or 5 seconds, they're like, yeah, I really enjoyed 500 startups and I think it was great. Would I do it again? And I'm not saying this to pick on 500s. Well, we'll keep switching the names. So, Acme Accelerator. Would I do Acme Accelerator again? And they go, I got to think about that. Maybe not at this point in my career. It means it probably wasn't that good because they're vested, right? They should, because they are partners with them, say, yeah, it's worth it. So you want to ask 5 people, 10 people, and then say, can I ask you just 2 questions? Would you do it again? And then what was the number one thing you got out of it? And if they can't just start gushing, well, we learned really how to pitch our company, and then Jason really helped us with the business model. And and he introduced us to David Sachs, and David Sachs introduced us to this person who became our COO, and Jason joined our board, and oh my God, we closed this much funding from these angels and the syndicate. If they don't pour out a bunch of answers when you ask the trick question, can you tell me one thing you got out of it, or the best thing you got out of it? They should be overflowing and gushing. If they just say, I really like my classmates, like, that's pretty weak, right? Well, of course you like your classmates. They're entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley. You're an entrepreneur. So ask people, would they do it again? And then you have to say to the accelerator, why should I give you 5%? What are you going to do for me? And that person should really have ownership of that answer. Also, you want to look at the individual. I'll be honest. A lot of people who run incubators are losers who couldn't make it in the real world. They couldn't run a company. They weren't good investors. And they wind up being a mentor and running an incubator. Now, and I would say the majority of accelerators are somewhere between bad and a waste of time. Literally, like some of them are bad and other ones are just a waste of your time. What you really want is the ones where they help the founders grow their business, make important contacts, hopefully with investors, because that's critical. So you really have to just ask the question to people who've been to the program. And you don't want to ask the accelerator to set you up with 3 former graduates. You want to search on the web and do a little archaeology on Crunchbase or Mattermark or AngelList or wherever and find out who went to that accelerator 3 years ago, and then find the founder on LinkedIn and then reach out to them and say, I was wondering if I could buy you a cup of coffee. I'm thinking about going to this accelerator. I'll meet you anywhere, anytime for 10 minutes just to buy you a cup of coffee. And I would love to hear what you're up to and how I might be able to reciprocate and help you. Some people like language, so I'll give you the language. Okay. Let's take another question. What are the 3 most important elements you are looking for when you invest in a company? The founder, and the founder. Honestly, what matters is the founder. Founders are the gods. They are the creators. Without the creator, the God who says this needs to exist in the world, there is nothing. So the god or goddess, I'm not sure if God, I thought God was gender neutral, but anyway, the god or goddesses who create these businesses are really what it's about, because they have to suffer and run these companies. It all begins and ends with the founder. If the founder is not compelling, if they're not passionate, if they're not smart, if the founder is not qualified, you're going to know it. Now, sometimes you'll get BS'd by a founder, but overall, what you really want to do is meet with tons and tons and tons of founders and start to get some signaling. There are introverted founders, there are extroverted founders, there are sales founders, there are tech founders. There's a whole cornucopia of founder archetypes. And there are archetypes that are yet to emerge. So you have to keep a super open mind. But over time, you'll get to know a founder and you'll be able to tell through what they make. Back to this God analogy. If the founder is a god or goddess, what do they make? Adam and Eve, the mountains, the sky, the planet Earth, the fish, the trees. What do they create? If they create something that is beautiful and meaningful and helpful in the world, now you start to understand that this person truly is a god or goddess and that this person is capable of changing the world and, in fact, creating a new world. If you look at something like Airbnb or Uber or Tesla or SpaceX, these founders are gods. They literally manifested a world-changing product out of their own sheer force of will. If that's not godlike behavior, I don't know what is. And this is why the world needs more founders to go out there and say, I want to create this in the world. Not people who say, I want to get into a training program to learn how to do this, and then maybe somebody will give me an opportunity. People do not give out opportunities. People take opportunities. This is the key thing you must learn. Young people of the world and old people who are frustrated and bitter understand that opportunities are taken, not handed out at some store or on some street corner. You have to see the opportunity and you have to take it. And you have to be able to build it. And you have to convince other people to build it. So I look for those founders who I know can build great things. And you can tell that by looking at their work. When I saw com.com, I looked at what Alex built. And the fact that he was able to get the domain name com.com, and the site was beautiful, and it was considered the same thing with Elon and the original Teslas and SpaceX. All the details were there. Airbnb had really crafted that business and made it work. And you see that over and over again with these great founders. They have a craftsmanship to what they build. So great founders who build great things. And I know this sounds super simple. You don't have to bet on people who haven't built anything yet. You can wait. You can get to meet them, and then you can look at what they build. And over time, you will start to get a sense for this as an investor. For me, I just love looking at people and what they build because I'm a simple guy. I look and I say, does that person really want to make this happen in the world? And do they have the energy and the wherewithal? Are they indefatigable? Are they resilient? Will they not give up in pursuit of what they want to see in the world? And do they have the ability to make stuff? Because just wanting to change the world means nothing. That's the problem with a lot of young people today. They want to change the world, but they're not willing to do anything. And you know what? The empty can makes the most noise. You'll see this over and over again as you start investing. You'll see people who want to change the world, but are unwilling to build anything or take any risk. You need those risk-taking, resilient people who want to build stuff in the world. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, let's take a final question. And this one we got by email from OV. What's Jason's take, that's me, on the product plus service startup? Does he think investors really only want a product or that's fully scalable, or can also the services side that can still scale through processes and humans is valuable and can scale? Okay. There was a time in Silicon Valley where people only wanted to invest in software or marketplaces, and any kind of services element scared people. And also with software, if you have to charge people to do consulting work, it's probably not scalable. So services means, okay, you hire IBM, they have a cloud software product, and they have people who will implement it for you. Or you hire Ernst & Young or Gartner Group, PricewaterhouseCoopers, whatever, Boston Consulting Group. There's a bunch of people who have consultants in their businesses. Now, some businesses and some pieces of software are so complex that you need a consultant to integrate it. But here in Silicon Valley, we consider the services businesses not that scalable, so some VCs don't like them. But the truth is, sometimes you need a layer of service to make things work well. So customer support is service. Customer onboarding and customer success. These are new job titles that we have in the sales departments. Those are essentially consultants. So when you're doing onboarding, that's consulting. When you're doing customer success and making sure people are using features, that's consulting. We just don't call it consulting anymore. So candidly, a service business will never get venture dollars if you're building the Boston Consulting Group or those kind of things, because the cost of goods is how little you can pay people, and your profit is based upon how much you can charge customers, and it's that little delta in between that makes you successful. Well, you know what? It's a horrible living. It doesn't scale. You wind up having 10 or 20% margins. Whereas if you sell software, you write software once, like Slack, and then if 1 million people use it or 10 million people use it, you essentially don't have to write any more or less software for 1 million or 10 million or 100 million people to use it, because software is so scalable today. So that's why people here are addicted to that. Now, there are a bunch of unique exceptions. The one I like best is hardware as a service. I have a company that we did the seed round in called Density that's doing very well right now, and they make a hardware product. They sell that hardware product with a service package that lets you know how many people are in a room without using a camera and breaking everybody's privacy. So imagine a little, hockey puck on your roof that's not a camera. It doesn't know any personal identification, but it does know there are 4 humans in the room and a dog. I mean, literally it can do that. And it knows there were 2 humans in the room for 8 hours and 1 human for an hour and the dog for 2 hours. So you know the overall utilization of this 8-person conference room for all eternity. And you know if, and Density.io, you can go take a look at it. That's an example of hardware plus software, hardware plus a service. And so hardware as a service or hardware involved in services, like CafeX has these hardware machines. They're giving, they're selling coffee. It feels like, are they in the retail business or not? Well, this is a new frontier tech where you're combining robotics with consumers. And you know what? When Uber and Lyft and Airbnb came out, and even Tesla, VCs did not want to be involved in Tesla originally. A lot of VCs turned them down and said, just make software for other car makers, sell into GM. That's what they told Elon. Sell battery packs and drivetrain and, these computers that will make other cars, hybrids or electric cars. And he said, no, I got to build the whole product. I want to build the entire solution. And so sometimes VCs don't have the creativity or the open-mindedness to understand these new categories of business. That's why you have great investors like Sequoia or Benchmark and other ones who just have the vision to see that not everything looks like everything that came before it, and they take chances on these kind of businesses. So you have to find the right investor as well to if you're going to break the mold like that. But it's a great question, Ovi. And if you feel you need to have the services layer on top of your software or hardware, that's okay. Just focus on delighting your customers, not delighting VCs or trying to fit into a VC's pre-existing, lemming worldview. Because a lot of these VCs are just lemmings. They see one photo app, they invest in 100. They see one VR company, they invest in 100. It seems inefficient from the outside, but it's kind of part of the boom-bust process of overfunding categories to figure out a winner, and that's okay. But for you, focus on the customer. If the customer needs some service, it's fine to have the service. And you know what? Down the road, you may learn so much providing services on top of your hardware or software that you learn how to productize them and use machine learning or AI to incorporate 2/3 of that service business into the original product. So sometimes that happens, and that's wonderful. So great question, Ovi. This has been a great episode. Thank you so much for everybody who listened. Thank you for Emmy Award-winning producer Jackie for putting all this together. We've got more questions we could ever answer, but I like to get through a dozen of these or so. And we'll see you all next time on This Week in Startups. Thanks to our partners and sponsors for making the show free. And thank you for sharing it and writing a review. Please tell people about This Week in Startups. Let them know that you listen to the podcast and they'll get a lot out of it. Literally just email this episode to a friend. That's all I ask. I do this. I put a lot of work into it. The team here puts a lot of work into it. All I ask is that you send it along to somebody else who could get value from it, because we're all learning together. If you disagree with any of the answers I gave here, you can email me anytime, jason@calacanis.com, my last name. And if you know anybody who's got a great startup that's just starting to get traction, that's when I like to invest. So right after they get their product completed, they got a couple of customers, a couple of users, more than willing to take an email from anyone, from anywhere. Because remember, a great founder can come from anywhere. I'm Jason Calacanis. This has been This Week in Startups. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.